This is the most exciting thing I've seen since Halley's Comet collided with the moon.
That never happened, Dad.
Sure it didn't.
It's Mantz and Mitchell on the weekend with Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell. A double shot of good conversation with great guests to power up your day. Mantz and Mitchell, you're on the air.
Thank you, Eric Kramer. Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday. Happy weekend to you, wherever you may be. I'm Gary Mantz.
I'm Suzanne Mitchell.
Together, we are Mantz and Mitchell in your ears for the hour. And today, we're not going to have Nathan Detroit with us. He's taking a quick vacation. He'll be back next week, but in the meantime, we get to work with that man of renown named David Brown. David, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and good morning to both of you.
And good morning to you, too. Happy to have you back. You've been a great substitute for us when we don't have Nathan, so we feel like we're in good hands for the next hour.
Thank you.
All right. And we have a returning guest on our show.
A returning veteran.
I don't know if she knows this or not, so we may just tell her now that she is in the top 5 people that we have had on our show over the almost 16 years we've been on air.
Wow. That's some rarefied.
Yeah. Let me give her mad props and let's bring her on. Alisha Mishell began interpreting astrology charts in 1998 when she was just a small child, when she understood how intimately we are connected to the sun, the stars, and planets as one system that includes us, our biorhythms, and nature. She interprets charts from both a personality point of view and a soul point of view. And to that end, I should also say she has interpreted my chart. She has been a guest on Mantz and Mitchell more than 24 times since 2009, as she is always a listener favorite. And her website is astroaware.net, all the way from Gainesville, Florida. Welcome to Mantz and Mitchell, Alisha Mishell.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you both.
Good to see you both, too.
This is also relative because we met and became friends with Alisha Mishell in Seattle. And here we are. She's in Gainesville, Florida. We're in Sarasota, and we're going all the way from Gainesville. Like, who do we think we're talking to? All those folks out in Western Washington, many of them quite aware of the very astro-aware Alisha Mishell. And I'm sure, Alisha, that you count many of those folks among your friends to this day.
I do, indeed. Thank you. It's very true.
Very
still,
good.
yeah, go ahead.
I've been getting your newsletter. You were, I believe, and I was searching my memory banks, and I am 99% sure that you are the very first person who talked about the age of Aquarius many years ago. And what you said about it was, Suzanne, it's not a light switch. It isn't like one day you're not in the age of Aquarius and the next day you are. You said it happens. It's a transition that happens over years. Now, we were listening to the music back in the 60s and the 70s about the age of Aquarius. And you said it's going to take several years to make that transition. In your most recent communication that I read, you talked about the age of Aquarius, the new moon this year in the age of Aquarius, and Pluto in Aquarius next year. And I thought, what better place to start than the age of Aquarius, because I've been thinking about this now since the 1960s. So when is it going to happen, Alisha?
We're definitely in it. Yeah. It's the quantum field. So it's really looking at it from the physics point of view with the sine waves and the particles. So the planets would represent the particles, and the signs and the constellations, and the energy therein is the waves of energy. So just like hues of color, you don't go from, red is red to pink, to white. So there's hues of color in between, just like sound, octaves, music, frequency, vibration. So it's all interconnected. So the real big, to me personally, The real big jump that we had was on 12/20/2020, when we had Saturn and Jupiter enter Aquarius. And I'm sure you two did something pretty special on that day. Most people I know did as well, and went out and watched it because it was conjunct. It was called the Bethlehem Star. A lot of people called it, but that particular energy field really, or that particular conjunction, it was like a harbinger to this new moon that we just had on the 23rd, and Pluto entering Aquarius on May 23rd coming up, or excuse me, March 23rd. So real big changes for us collectively in March of this year. A lot of changes. But
do you feel positive about these changes?
I do. I feel like so let's look at the fundamentals. It's an air sign. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. So one of the things that I'm really seeing and intuitively feeling and perceiving is that we're becoming more aware of how we're all connected as a species, how there is indeed a collective consciousness, a collective unconsciousness as well. And so the air is connected to communication, cognition, thought, and literally the air that we breathe. So when we had that conjunction in 2020 was right when we were going into the whole COVID experience that we've been sharing the air, collectively. So there's, it relates to technology, artificial intelligence, humanitarianism, altruism, brotherhood, sisterhood. So there's a lot of, everything has spectrum, right? We talk about that a lot. Like everything has spectrum on this dimension, on the third dimension. So it really is based on our thoughts and how we, energy follows our thoughts. Where our thoughts go, energy flows, right? So as a collective, I see mass awakenings. And then we also have Saturn entering Pisces that same month. I think it's on the 7th of March. And then Mars will be entering Cancer on the 25th of that same month. And it's been in Gemini for 7 months. So really big changes, you guys, that we're going to be seeing in March, collectively.
Oh, that's good to know. Don't you feel like you've been made aware about this now, Gary?
It's very confirming and reaffirming for me, Alisha, because when I do my divination work, and I'm a big fan of the I Ching, if any of you ever want to know more about that, drop me a line. What the I Ching is showing me is that we are coming into a time when people are going to be deciding which group they choose, important word, to belong to. And with that, you simultaneously make a choice of values, of shared experiences. What are your cardinal principles? What do you live by? That may be shifting. And if you find yourself in a situation where it's too abrasive for you, there's too much conflict, it could just be that you need a fundamental change in your associations with other people. Then you'll see the change you were hoping for in your own life.
I love that. Thank you, Gary. Absolutely. It's, the good word or a good phrase for Aquarius energy is we the people. It's a progressive energy. It's about how we're all connected. And it represents the 11th house in an astrology chart. So it's our goals, aspirations, and, what we're working towards in terms of the structure for the community, the tribe, and also the collective. So yeah, I totally agree with you 100%.
Alisha, I will often talk about people's vibrations or people's frequencies. And when your personal vibration changes, you may find that who you vibrate with is different, that the things that you used to do, the places you used to go, the people you used to hang out with, they might not be a good fit anymore. And so with the change of your personal vibration, there might be new people coming into your life, new interesting people, new interesting ideas, a little bit more creativity. And the thing that I wanted to bring to you was the vibration of the planets, the vibration of, we have our personal frequency, but then there's also the frequency of the stars and the planets that affect us as well. When I read what you write about it as being one system, that can have a big effect on us, can't it?
Absolutely. It is one system. Big Bang and creation is literally the same exact event. It's just a left brain interpretation and the right brain interpretation of humanity, trying to understand this cosmic event, that we're all part of. So in fact, it all goes, mathematics is the language of nature. That's really the bottom line for me. It's physics, it's geometry, it's energy, it's frequency. What did Tesla say? He said, if you want to find out the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And he was the first, right in the beginning of the 1900s. But his work is so prevalent and so it's really coming into fruition now, especially as we go into the age of Aquarius. We're going to see so much like free energy and med beds and, connection. So you're absolutely right. The quantum field is we live and move and have our being. It says that in the Holy Bible in Acts. We live and move and have our being, right, in the mind of God. We live in the mind of God. That, to me, my perception of that is that is the quantum field. And these planets, the music of the spheres, like this Pythagoras and Egyptian and Greek, and like they knew back then that they understood the power of sound. Let there be light, speaking it into existence, how powerful it is that sound and light are two aspects of really the same thing on the innermost plane. But on this level, we separate sound and light and color and, frequency and music. But they're all intertangled, that's what they call the quantum entanglements, like you were just saying. That's how we're affected by these planetary movements. And that's why I can say with authority that we're going to see some really big changes in March, because we have three big, planetary forces changing from one constellation to another, imbuing the cosmic field, the quantum field, with a different quality of energy that we then respond to or react to, depending on if we're aware or not.
When you talk about changes, I wonder about choices, because it seems like whenever there is a potential change, if there's a change on the horizon, that things can go one way or things can go another way. And when we've talked to futurists and people who are trying to see into what is becoming of humanity and countries and our planet, we often hear we're at a crossroads. It can go one way or it can go another way. We kind of hope with all of the awareness about climate change and the planet that, we've got our fingers crossed that maybe things will get better. But right. I don't know that there's a guarantee that they're going to get better. There is the opportunity for them to get better, but they could also get worse. So when you're talking about these changes coming up in March, do you see good ones, bad ones, or a combination of the two as being potential changes? How does it look to you?
Yeah, to me, it looks positive, but I'm also really energizing the positive visions that I've had in the past, different dreams that I've had. I've seen, and I actually told you guys about it when I first met you and did a show with you guys about the sun. That I had different dreams and visions back in the 90s repeatedly about this energy coming from the sun and all the generating forces. Everything stopped on the planet and everyone remembered their God consciousness and how much it touched me, and so that's what I energize. There's a lot of prophecy around this, but I've also seen in my dreams and visions an EMP that puts out all the electricity as well. So yeah, it could go either way. It can be man-made or it can be from source and from nature. The one from nature is what I have seen is very beautiful, and people remember our God consciousness. It's more than amazing. It's hard to even describe. I couldn't even talk about it without crying because it just made me weep. It was just so beautiful. But I've also, it depends, I still believe that, okay, here's a good example, Suzanne. Like a lot of people know the word paranoia, right? So paranoia is when we worry and we have anxiety and even maybe neurosis, depending on how far you're on the spectrum. But the opposite of that is pronoia. And pronoia is when we believe that the universe conspires for us, for our good, right? So the reason I do what I do every day is to help people remember that we're not just a part of nature, we are nature. We are intimately connected. Our earth, air, fire, and water, the elements in us, is nature. We just have forgotten. So the more that we remember this, to me, we'll be empowered. And how can we hurt someone when they're actually a part of us? How can we hurt the earth when it's a part of us? It's just the knowledge has been erased. So I believe a lot that you and Gary do has to do with education, inspiring people, bringing insight, and helping people remember like their spiritual nature and how amazing that we all come from love and we all return to love. So I just always want to energize the positive things that I see happening. And, I don't believe that we're going to turn into zombies and, have fight over a loaf of bread, and I feel like there's a lot of programming out there to get us in a paranoia state. And I really want to do that. I want to be the antidote. I want to pull us into the paranoia, right? The universe is for us. Does that make sense?
The universe is friendly in that way. There's
right.
The mechanics of the universe, as far as I can tell, being a non-scientist, that is indifferent. That's a matter of law. But if you are in alignment with laws, I refer to them as divine laws, then you are positioning yourself for success attitudinally. You're shifting your philosophy from whatever wasn't working for you to an alignment that makes the universe a friendly place. Einstein himself said that God doesn't play dice with the universe. Right. You have to know on what you can rely, and what you can rely on in this physical universe and all the spirit and all the laws behind it is a matter of structure, of order. It needs to be dependable, or you're going to be going through life nervous all the time. Everything seems risky when you don't have anything or anyone on whom you can depend.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, when we're in fight or flight and we're in worried and anxiety, our adrenals, we can't find empathy. They have proven this in neurobiology. Like if we're in fight or flight as a human species, part of the human species, and we're worried and we're scared and we're fearful, we literally cannot activate and contact our empathy for each other. We lose that because we're in survival mode. So I think another really big piece, you guys, is Saturn going into Pisces in March of this year. Hasn't been there for 29 and a half years. And so those two energies together, this is really about grounding spirituality. Grounding is a Saturn piece, right? It creates a container for our imagination, our dreams, and our spirituality and our mysticism. So I'm really foreseeing great awakening in the next 2.5 years on this planet, with people remembering that we are spirit in human form and that we're all one species and that we're in this together.
And then what role does Pisces play in Saturn going into Pisces?
Well, to me, it's like purpose. Saturn's purpose, Pisces, is contemplation, meditation. I believe it's really going to help a lot of like healers and people that are artists and musicians that are bringing in the spiritual essence. It's like materializing spirit, spiritualizing matter. That's what Saturn, to me, my perception, Saturn and Pisces is about. So, yeah.
Yeah, with Pisces being a water sign, that's a feeling sign, and you're saying contemplation,
mysticism,
too.
Contemplation, meditation is the 12th house. It's also the collective. It's the 12th. It's the all of the signs together is the 12th house. So it's how we're all connected. It's the water, it's the ocean.
I think people have different uses for the term. So tell us, Alisha, what do you mean by, whenever you use the word collective or you speak of the collective, what goes on in your mind? What does that look like to you?
Okay. The collective is the human race and how we're all interdependent on this planet. We share the air, the water, the iron that's in our blood. It's been here since the beginning. So it's all one system. So we all share this. This is, to me, that's the collective. When you asked me that question, a thought came up that if I give this reference point, it might help. Because when I first met you and Suzanne, Pluto was going into Capricorn. And one of the things I did a talk at an event for you guys. And I was telling your audience that when Pluto comes into Capricorn, that energy comes together, it changes the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is government, healthcare, education, the banking system. And look what has happened in the last 13 to 14 years. And 2008 is when it started. And that's when the .com and the real estate, and because it exposes what's doesn't work, what's the abuse of power, right? So that we can rebuild. So we're coming out of that, you guys. The American Revolution happened 248 years ago, the last time Pluto was in Capricorn. So we're really going into a whole different thing as a collective. So that reference point is so that I can tell you about Saturn, because Saturn restructures what it touches. Pluto transforms. Uranus awakens. So this connects to the psyche, the human psyche, in different ways, right? And we interpret it differently. But the more aware we can be, that's why I call my company Astrological Awareness, is because I want to help create and help people remember, this awareness. But that we're really in this together.
Alisha, I do remember your being on the show and talking about the collapse of the systems, the way that they have been, and that we were going to have new systems. And at the time that you said that, and this was many years ago, I felt as though it was scary. I felt as though it was pretty negative, because I didn't have an idea in my head about how you could collapse some systems in order to create others. So it felt like apocalyptic. It's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And it's interesting that we ended up with the bailouts of, car companies and banks and other things. And, what that means for the future with some of these infrastructures of our economy and education. And I was, it just seems like in this ebb and flow, this river of life, some of the things that I see, I think are very positive. Some of the things I see are very negative. And it's hard to, from my vision, it's hard to see, where it's all going. But that fear of like, oh, when these systems collapse, what are we going to do? Well, other things have taken their place,
and we're going to rebuild.
Right. And we are in that process. But I do remember you're saying that all those years ago. And I remember just like gasping and holding my breath and going, oh my God. I mean, what does this mean? I mean, the end of the United States.
Yeah.
It felt bad.
Yeah.
But, to have it morph into something else is interesting. And one of the things that's kind of interesting to me along those lines is this idea of the virtual currency, because when you talked about banking and money and all of that, one thing I noticed is that there are very few cash transactions. Most everybody just does things with a credit card, which is very virtual. But then the other thing was the rise of the virtual currencies. And now that's not working. When all of a sudden you find out that's kind of a pyramid scheme that's collapsing. And so I don't know that we're completely out of that turmoil of the collapsing banking system and having something to take its place that's really going to work yet. Right. Does that make sense to you?
Totally. Yeah. And that's also Uranus and Taurus. Uranus is creating huge change with currency, and it is going to become more and more digital. There's no doubt, because Uranus is then going into Gemini in 2026. So also with Aquarius, that is Aquarius is it governs technology, the internet, space travel, astrology, digital currencies is a part of that. So it's inevitable, but I think there's like a learning curve anywhere where you go when you learn geometry, right?
Yeah. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a perfect straight line. It gets corrected along the way, like a guided missile. It goes left and right and left and right and left and right till it hits the mark. So we don't hit the mark in one straight line. Interesting about virtual banking, because during this period of time since 2008, I've done two things. One is I have two banks that are not brick and mortar. And I tell you, my throat was in my mouth sending money, wiring money to a bank I could not see or walk into. Just completely freaked me out both times. And since that time, I do all of my own personal banking online. I don't walk into the bank anymore. I don't write checks anymore. I go into the internet and I pay my bills. And so to that end, that has changed quite a bit. We had a bank here in Sarasota that got turned into a restaurant. They abandoned the bank and they made it into a restaurant. So it's like, I'm wondering what's going to happen with places like banks and gas stations and places where we don't, need those services anymore. I think you wanted to say something else.
No, I just wanted to agree with you about the course correct.
Yes.
I teach that a lot. And I think that is a part of the way we learn. And just because it's part of nature, but there is a bell curve. There is a learning curve with everything new that we learn and experience. But I think the more we focus on the positive outcomes and then we educate ourselves and learn and remember who we are, to me, that's the essence of the healing right there.
That is well said. And just as a side note, anytime you feel the urge to agree with us, Alisha, feel free. It helps move the show along. It also helps ensure a repeat invitation, too, as a matter of fact. So we are here, our honored guest of the hour. And after too long a time, we're delighted to have her back in our company and yours, ladies and gentlemen, Alisha Mishell. When we come back, we'll do what we call the marketing piece. And Suzanne will extract information from Alisha that you can use to get up close and personal with Alisha Mishell and benefit from all that she and her company, AstroAware, have to offer. Give us a couple of minutes. We're Mantz and Mitchell, and we will be right back here on Seattle's AM 1150.
Hi, everybody. This is Anson Williams from Happy Days, and I'm so excited to tell you about American Road. It is the best car travel magazine in the world. They have the most fantastic adventures detailed in each magazine with all your itinerary. We could just jump in the car with your family and have the most fabulous adventures you've ever had in your life. Please get a copy of American Road and start your own adventure.
Staying connected with Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell is easy. Just go to mantzandmitchell.com for the latest info on topics and guests. Friend Gary Mantz and Suzanne Mitchell on their Facebook pages and like the Mantz and Mitchell show page at facebook.com/MantzandMitchell. If you're on Twitter, share a follow with Gary and Suzanne at Mantz Mitchell. Join Gary and Suzanne Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. for an unusual show that covers everything from personal growth to the paranormal.
Here's an amazing act. Here's a tremendous act. Here's a startling act. The amazing, the thrilling, the greatest, spectacular, incredible, exciting, wonderful, world-famed, most unusual novelty act.
The home of the A-team of Alternative Talk is mantzandmitchell.com. Heard right here on Alternative Talk 1150 AM or streaming live from your computer anywhere.
Terry Loving wants to help you with your online marketing challenges right now. She has several courses she is giving away to help you get your business working for you online. Yes, giving away. WordPress websites are her specialty, yet her technical skills go way beyond that. Check out her blog at terryloving.com or email her directly at terry@terryloving.com. That's terry@terryloving.com.
I'm Gary Mantz.
I'm Suzanne Mitchell.
We're a couple of baby boomers who bring you a talk radio mix of metaphysics and music, politics, and pop culture.
And you never know which celebrity will join us for an interesting conversation.
Mantz and Mitchell is Boomer HQ, Friday and Saturday mornings at 10 on 1150 AM KKNW.
Your home for alternative talk in Seattle and Western Washington.
An alternative to everything else on your radio dial. Alternative Talk 1150.
full of people, all alone. Roads full of houses, never home. Church full of singing, out of tune. Everyone's gone to the moon.
Welcome back to Mantz and Mitchell and our guest, Alisha Mishell. Alisha, if people want to connect with you, I know what your website is. Tell everybody else what your website is and what you have going on and maybe what they can do with you.
Okay.
Or what you can do for them.
Okay. Well, my website is astroaware.net. It represents Astrological Awareness Network. And I have a brick and mortar here in Gainesville, Florida. It's 13 Moon Studio. And I do different classes, and I have a wonderful workshop coming up in March 18th. It's called the Unique Verse Method. And basically what I'm teaching people, I'm really excited about this workshop. It's new and unique, is basically teaching people what their unique verse is in the universe. And the universe to me is a sound frequency. It's the sound, the monochord, as Pythagoras called it, right? But yeah, just teaching people that we all have vibration and frequency, and there's a part of it is in the innermost planes. It's in its perfection, and how to remember, who we are and our gifts and strengths and talents, and deal with our shadow as well. So that's
Is any of that virtual, or is that all in person?
The one on the 18th is in person, but I do have some Zoom courses as well. They can write to me at Alisha@astroaware.net, and I can send some information if any of your listeners are interested. Yeah, I do a lot of Zoom stuff weekly, just about.
Well, since you were very popular in Seattle, even though you're living in Florida now, it would be good if people could connect with you and take a Zoom class. So astroaware.net is the place to go and sign up for something with Alisha Mishell.
All this talk and even a song about the moon. Alisha, tell our listeners your interpretation of the moon as an important part of the zodiac. You talk to anybody from the Western scientific world, those who scoff, and they will say, first of all, you guys don't even know what a planet is, because the moon is not a planet, it's a satellite. It's our only satellite. And so why are you talking about the moon like it's a planet? Right. In astrology terms, there are very good reasons for that. And Alisha is going to entertain us with those right now.
Sure, definitely. You're right on. It's extremely important, and in terms of your emotional nature. And that's another thing, you guys, that we'll really be seeing a lot of healing in the planet and the collective is with Saturn Pisces, is emotional intelligence being more developed and cultivated consciously. So the moon in your chart, wherever it was, depicts two things that are really important. One, the evolutionary process of your soul, like where you are in this lifetime. If you're born on a full moon babies are here to experience a good deal of illumination and remembering and awakening. A Balsamic born baby has a completely different soul's growth point and critical points for them. Okay. And then that's one aspect, is the soul's growth. And then the other piece is your emotional nature. It also connects you to your connection to women, your wife, if you're, if you're married to a woman or if you're dating a woman, and also women in general, those relationships. A moon in Cancer. We'll just give you an example. Someone with a moon in Cancer will be more sensitive and nurturing, empathic, sympathetic, moody, clannish, very protective of their family. Whereas if you have a moon in Aries, that person, that's fire as opposed to water, right? So it's going to have a really different element and different energetic. So that person is going to be usually more bold, pioneering, athletic, fiery in their nature, impulsive. It would be a side of that as well. But understanding your moon is super important. I do a lot of that with women and their or family and their children, understanding the different moons in the house and how you can emotionally connect and understand each other better without projecting that you need to emotionally be like me, right? Does that make sense?
Not everybody is going to know where their moon is. In fact, a lot of people barely even know where their sun sign is.
Right.
But I'm going to say that we have such a sophisticated listenership that a lot of people will know what sign their moon is in. And so I like what you said about Cancer, and I like what you said about Aries. Could you quickly run through the other zodiac signs so if people know where their moon is, it will just give them a little bit of a clue?
Sure. So we'll start with, like I was saying with Aries, to understand like the energy of a moon in Aries would be the pioneer. But then when you go into the next hue, the next octave in Taurus, that would be the settler. That would be the person who tills the ground and the earth, right? So it goes from fire to earth. So Taurus is earth, is fixed earth. So a person with a Taurus moon would be, the gardener. Also, they're really good with finances. A lot of times they do accounting or they own their own business. So it's about earth. Earth is material plane. So you take the synthesis, you guys, of the element and the energy of where they are in the constellation. So this is part of how you would interpret. So when you go from that to Gemini, and Mars in Gemini, very curious, right? It's very cerebral. The person with, moon in Gemini. We've been in Mars in Gemini for 7 months. So that's all I can think about sometimes is that Mars in Gemini just came out of retrograde on the 12th of January. So the moon in Gemini, very cerebral, curious, loves to research, can be really fickle and hard to make decisions a lot of times when it has, they want to do everything. So it's like, it's hard for them just to be set on one thing. Moon in Cancer, I mentioned, very family oriented, very much love food and understand food, a lot of times people with Cancer moons enjoy cooking for other people and creating nice environments. And Leo, again, we're back to fire. A moon in Leo, they're very expressive. Creative self-expression is very important for them. They tend to be actors and performers, and they stand out wherever they are. They're really strong, charismatic emotionally. The next one would be moon in Virgo. Moon in Virgo is another earth sign. It's ruled by Mercury. This person is generally, they love data and information. It's different than the Gemini. Gemini likes facts. Mercury wants to apply that Virgo wants to apply that information. They're very curious. They're very perfectionistic, and they really can be myopic sometimes, but they really can hyper focus on details. But they are just magnificent to work with. They have really strong work ethics. The next one be Libra. The moon in Libra, that's an air sign. That's ruled by Venus. It's the 7th house, so it has to do with others. Where Mars is its opposite, Aries is its opposite. It's about me and myself and developing myself. That one is about others, collaborations, contracts, working with other people's partnerships. The next one would be Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio. This is like still waters run deep with a Scorpio moon. These people are our psychologists and our healers and our shamans, and they have really deep emotions. They tend to brood if they're hurt or betrayed, or even sometimes if it's a slight in their imagination, they can really withdraw and feel really hurt. But every sign is magnificent. I have to say that all of us have polarity, and we can, depends on where we are on our spectrum and our emotional nature. Okay. The next one is Sagittarius. That's another fire sign. So a person with really strong moon in Sagittarius, these are our philosophers. These are people that love adventure and travel and explore, and they tend to be the ones that really fight for causes and people. Moon in Capricorn is another earth sign. Moon in Capricorn, these are our entrepreneurs, our executives. They build systems. They love structure. They love discipline. So they bring that to wherever they are, their families, their colleagues. They bring really strong systems and structure. Moon in Aquarius, we're almost done. Moon in Aquarius is this progressive energy. These are our mavericks, our seers, our knowers. They think outside of the box, and they see. Also, I like to call them system busters. They see the flaws in the systems, and they help change them. They don't just obsess over them or be upset about them. They say, how can we change this? How can we really make a progressive move towards something bigger, for everyone's good, because it's a collective energy. And the last one is moon in the 12th. That's Pisces. This is the mystic, the musicians. A lot of people that have really strong Pisces tend to be writers and thinkers and feelers, and they really express the mystic side of the human experience.
Thank you for doing that. You did that
Sure.
so
Wonderfully
beautifully and
done.
so quickly. And I know a lot of people who do know where their moon is would appreciate just a couple of reminder words about how that moon energy affects them, how it affects their personality as well as their soul's growth.
Allow me to give you an example, Alisha.
Sure.
I was born under a full moon in Pisces in the 8th house.
Wow.
So I've been told that I set myself rather a challenge in this lifetime.
Yeah, but look what you do. The 8th house is the magic of the behind the veils. It's like investigating and researching and deepening. That's what you do. And that's awesome. You represent it well.
Well, thank you for saying that. When it comes to the moon placement, this is where you're experiencing your emotions. It's that emotional lens or prism, PRISM, there through which you tend to operate. And I will tell you, Alisha, that for years at a time until I woke up to it, I found myself operating on a daily basis in my interactions far more through my Piscean element than my sun sign of Virgo. I had to remind myself, look, you're supposed to be analytical and pragmatic, and here you are out in dreamland. I would get to the point, and this is something characteristic. I'm sure there are some people listening who will relate to this themselves. I can remember sitting in parochial school in the afternoon and geography would be going on. I didn't really care. I was outside with these birds in Southern California who would fly outside because there was a field next to our row of classrooms, just an empty field. And these birds would be flying and they had a very distinctive song. And when I would hear that, I wanted so badly to be out there with them, free as a bird. Free to fly instead of, talking about, the rivers of America or something like that. I mean, it's good to know for a test, but I didn't really care.
Right.
I was daydreaming. And what you'll find with people who have Pisces, either they're born under the sign of Pisces or it's prominent in their chart, what you will find is that daydreaming to a Piscean affects us with tranquility. It's nature's tranquilizer. When we're floating freely and into free association, that is tranquilizing to a Pisces, whereas to someone else who's hard charging in Aries, for example, or maybe even a Gemini, might consider that a waste of time.
Really nicely said. Thank you for that. Yeah, you also another key word, you guys, is joy. Where your moon is will tell you like where you find your joy, like what you enjoy doing and experiencing. So for you in the 8th house, that makes total sense. And also the full moon aspect, Gary, I just want to touch on one more thing that you said I think is really super important, is when you have a 180-degree opposite of planets in your chart, and yours are the luminaries, so we're going to focus on those, but it can be Mars and Venus, it can be Pluto and Saturn, but anybody that has any oppositions, anyone that's listening to this, is so important to understand that what we tend to do is we live out one side or the other, and then we find the middle way, okay, when we have an opposition. So that's what I just heard you say, and that's very natural. And when a person gets polarized on one side, they tend to attract through physics, what's called attractor forces. They attract other people that hold these vibrations so that they can actually connect with that part of themselves they're either denying, disassociating from, or just not connecting because they get stuck on this side. But this is how we develop ourselves and we cultivate the wholeness that we all have access to. So you just demonstrated that in what you just shared. So I thought that was very cool, very perceptive of you.
Well, thank you. I also have known people with their moon in Aries, and yes, they have the fire in the belly that shows up a lot, but they also tend to have an impulsive nature. They'll jump into something and then go, oh, wait, I might have made a mistake, but they've already committed.
Yep. Yeah. Rick Levine, who lives there, he calls it ready, fire, aim.
Yes.
I've heard him say that a lot. Yeah. Yeah, because it's Mars, right? And Mars can be impulsive. It can really jump, it leaps quickly. But the thing is the aspects, the key is the aspects. A lot of people, like Suzanne was saying, some people know their sun sign. Some people don't even know they have a moon sign. But those are just, those are 12 aspects. But when you if you really want to understand yourself, you have to look at the geometry. You have to understand the math and the aspects and the harmonics, because that tells the story of your soul. That tells your story of what you're here to develop and how you can get from A to B quicker if you understand. Because there is a tendency to get stuck sometimes. What is it called? The path of least resistance is a human condition often, right? So, but if it's a square 90-degree angle, it can inhibit your moon. If you have Saturn squaring your moon in the 8th house, that person can have a lot of inhibition emotionally, or feeling joy, or, that the fruitfulness in that area of their life, But
some years ago, you did my chart for me, and we talked at least twice. I think you did an update for me as well one time. If people want to find out the things that you're talking about with their soul's growth and their personality aspects, are you still doing chart interpretation for people?
Oh yeah, I still do that. I do that frequently. Mm-hmm.
So if somebody goes to astroaware.net, they may be able to get with you for a very complete kind of explanation of what is going on in their chart. Yes?
Absolutely. I love sharing astrological information and helping people understand and remember who they are.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
And there were things that you told me that I still remember today.
Wow.
From our conversation about you're looking at my chart that were significant to me. Wow. So, when you read that chart for somebody, you are interpreting where things are in relationship to other things, the houses and the planets and all of that. It can be very, very informational, and some of it really sticks. So, I want to tell people to do that. Go ahead and do that.
It's a synthesis. Yeah, go ahead.
We heard recently that when people meet, they may or may not know where their moon is placed, but two people with the same moon sign will be attracted to each other. That they'll feel a closeness to each other without even knowing why. Mm-hmm. That emotional component is, you meet somebody else who has the same moon as you're going to like them.
Truth. Yeah. Because you're going to get each other emotionally. You can understand each other a lot better than if it was an opposite or a square of your moon sign. It also, 4th house is the moon. The moon governs the 4th house. The 4th house is your family. It's your domestic sphere. So you tend to feel at home with that person right away. And you don't know why, but it's the moons. Yeah, it's exactly it. You nailed it.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting piece of information. I pick up little dribs and drabs of information about astrology and numerology and things that I will recall later, and I'll say, oh yeah, I remember they said that. That was very interesting. And so I think it's useful, to know a lot of this stuff as far as what can make your life a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love working with family and parents to understand their children better. There's a tendency for parents to project their psyche onto the child. And when I give them this information, it's like such an aha moment for a lot of the people that I've been able to work with, and understanding like the moon is connected to the psyche through the emotions. Mercury's the mind. It's the way you communicate, your needs and communication, the way you process data and information. So Venus is the way you love. Venus is what you're attracted to. Mars is your drive, what drives you to achieve. So these things are really important in relationships. In romantic relationships, but also like people that, are your children, or even people that are going to work for you. As I've done charts for companies sometimes when they're hiring people, to understand, is this going to be a good fit for my company? So yeah, you can see all that in a natal chart.
Oh, this is very interesting. Yeah. You have been solicited to provide astrological insight and an energetic perspective on someone who was a prospective, an executive, a CEO?
Yeah. It was, they were actually hiring and interviewing, and it was 3 different charts that I looked at, an executive assistant. And so, so I helped with that choice. And it was actually super clear when I saw the astrodynamics.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it that would be used, because that, to me, some people might be aghast, but I think it's great that what you do could be mainstreamed in that way. That there's a place in corporate culture for that says a lot.
Yeah. It saves you a lot of headache and trouble in the long run, at least for it did for this person.
That's great. Is there anything that you can see? Now, I think what you talked about, what coming up in March, was really significant. And so I like that. Is there anything else that you see coming up between now and March that people should just maybe be aware of?
Between now and March, let's see. This is a good thing that I was hoping to mention. We just came out of retrograde phases at the end this last week, and so all the planets have been in and out of retrograde since last fall. And with Mercury going direct on the 19th, we have no retrograde planets until I believe it's May, beginning of May, when Pluto goes retrograde. So this is the time, you guys, to focus on your intent, work on your dreams and aspirations. We're coming out of a long Saturn square Uranus, about 2.5 years of that, and so there's a lot of resistance in that. So now we're really like, whatever your dreams and aspirations are, and also tuning into your uniqueness. What's your unique, gift that you have to bring to your collective, your tribe, your community? This is the time to really tap into that. So I would say, buckle your seatbelts and hang on. And it's gonna be a wild ride, but in a good way. I really just want to emphasize that it is what we make it. And I really want to focus on the positive aspects, not in a way that's not, spiritual bypass, but really in the way that we create our reality, and that we can do this.
One of the questions that I get from people who hear the term and don't fully understand it, and I think that creates some uneasiness in them, and that's the idea of a personal Saturn return. I've had people say, well, next year is my Saturn return, and they say that with trepidation. Why would that be the case?
Yeah, I've seen that as well. It's actually Saturn's got a really bad rap. Saturn, we need Saturn. Saturn is the structure. Everyone wants to focus on jovial Jupiter and how amazing and expansive and opportunities and all this with Jupiter. But, Jupiter can create some, hubris and arrogance and bad decisions and overdoing and not knowing your limitations. Saturn is structure, and it does bring the limitations. It has the icy rings around it. So alchemically speaking, it brings limitations so that we can slow down and take care of what's important and let go of what's superfluous and what isn't good for us. So I actually wanted to mention that those born between 1964 and 1967 are heading into their second Saturn return as we enter Saturn in Pisces. And those born between 1993 and 1996 are heading into their first Saturn return. And this is really about getting, very clear about your structure and the system that's going to contain your dream and your life. And people don't like it sometimes, Gary, because it is a pruning process, and it's letting go of, pruning away the dead branches is the way I see it in my mind's eye. But then your roses can grow, your flowers, your hibiscus, can grow. But you got to get rid of the dead branches that's sucking your life force. So it's a way of, getting down to what's important and the essence. And that's what Saturn does. And a lot of people don't like change, and they don't want to let go of things.
That's a new way of expressing it, Alisha, because I have heard of Saturn referred to as the cosmic cop, which denotes karma. And another way of looking at it is as a report card on your life. How are you doing? Are you making the grades so far? And if not, what do you need to do to remediate?
Excellent. That's very well said. Because here's the thing, you guys, when we don't, let's say we go to our Saturn return and then we don't get the lessons and we don't make the changes, well, you'll go through another cycle until your Uranus opposition at 41. You'll continue that cycle, those patterns. We always have opportunities, but we can deny them, and then we can miss growth. So avoiding, if we avoid, go ahead.
Is this at the start of your 29th birthday?
Yeah. It's around 27 is when you start feeling the energy.
Okay.
The Saturn return. But here's the key: if we avoid scrutiny or we avoid constructive criticism, we can really we can miss opportunities in our own growth, our own personal growth. So it's really about honest self-appraisal and doing the inner work. And we're all wired to do so.
I love that.
Alisha Mishell, a
Thank
delight
you.
to have you with us
Thank
again.
you.
We won't take so long between visits next time. And your website once again, please.
It's astroaware.net.
Beautiful.
Thank you for being with us today.
A delight.
Thank you. It was awesome to see you both. Thank you.
All right. Join us next Friday.
We'll be back, and have yourselves a great weekend, everyone. Be kind to each other.